All right, hello folks. Welcome to Buster Bottom Outdoors. If you're new to the channel, I'm James. I'll be the host of this here thing, and I was just sitting down here fooling with the bow, trying to get some things ready for the season coming up. You should always check your bow out if you hadn't shot it in a while. Before you go to pull it back the first time, you need to make sure that all your cams are in good shape and all your strings are in good shape. And I'll show you my bows here. This is my bow. This is a Hoyt Intruder Raptor. This thing is, shoot, I don't know, 30 years old. I still use the same bow. I've used it for that many years. I'm not one of those guys that change bows every time a new one comes out. I find something I like and I stick with it. That bow there has put a lot of deer in the freezer and some on the wall. And so anyway, I was sitting down here and I was just thinking about a story that I wanted to tell y'all, so we're going to say welcome to story time at Buster Bottom. If you've watched my channel before, you've seen one story I put on here about a friend of mine named Robert. We call him Rabbit as a nickname. And this story is about Rabbit again. This is about the first deer that he ever killed. The last one was about a buck that he had killed, and he was really excited about that. And I thought y'all would enjoy this one too, so we're going to give this one a shot. We hunted him, Rabbit, myself, and my brother-in-law, Ernie. We hunt a lot together, and did until Rabbit passed away. But we hunted this place in Virginia, and it was a cattle farm. The old guy had about 100 acres, and there wasn't a lot of woods on it, but there was enough. It was mostly fields, but he had a big strip down the creek bank that was full of woods, and it went up the side of the hill, and it was a really good place to hunt. I mean, there was a lot of deer down there. We called it Mr. Horn's Cattle Farm. So we all decided we was gonna go down there. We'd got permission to hunt down there, and Ernie and myself had went down during archery season, and Ernie had shot a doe, or shot at a doe, should I say. And as sometimes they do, you know, we was new to archery. None of us had ever killed a deer with a bow before. And as deer do, which you learn over time of hunting, is a lot of times they'll drop down some and duck your arrow. And Ernie had shot at a doe, and sure enough, she ducked, and all we found was a bunch of hair. He said, I think I hit her across the back of the hind quarter. And so anyway, we took old Rabbit down there, and Ernie said, look here, said, I'm going to show you where I killed that doe, or shot at that doe at. And he said, there's a deer always comes up through there. I was hunting down below him probably, I don't know, 200, 300 yards. I was hunting the creek bottom, and we went in that morning before daylight. Back then, we was big advocates of you had to get in there, you know, hour before daylight and sit there and wait and let everything calm down and all that. And so Ernie said, I'll take him up and drop him off at that spot. So walked past my spot, and he had went up in there, and I'd climbed up into I had a tree stand down there, and I climbed up into my tree stand, and Ernie took Rabbit on up up the hollow there and dropped him off. And I don't know, right around daylight or so, I guess. A little bit after daylight, I guess. I heard boom. And here again, Rabbit always hunted with a 12 gauge single barrel shotgun, double aught buck. That was his gun of choice, and he killed a lot of deer with it over the years. But this was his first experience really of ever killing one. And I heard boom. And I said, man, it sounded like rabbit shooting. Just one shot. And I don't know, maybe 10 minutes went by. Maybe not even that long. And I hear, Ernie, Ernie, Ernie. I said, what in the world? I said, yeah. And you know, when you're sitting out there in the woods, sound carries, and I was like, man, did Robert shoot his foot off or something, you know? I started getting worried, and so I climbed down out of my stand. And now the whole time I was climbing down out of my stand, what I was hearing was, Ernie, Ernie. And I said, man, he must be hurt or something bad. And I said, I better hurry up. So I got on down and I started my way up through there. And like I said before in the other video, you had to know Rabbit. And if you knew Rabbit, you knew that you better be, you know, he was a good hunter. He was cautious, but at the same time, you didn't want to sneak up on him, or, you know how it is. I mean, he was new to hunting like everybody else, and he was, I don't know, I was just a little weary of just walking up there with him a gun in his hand, you know, not really knowing exactly where he was going to be. I had a good idea, but not really the exact spot. So I get up there, he's still hollering, Ernie, Ernie. And so I get to where I can see him, and I see him up there, and he's standing up there on a rock. And he's got his shotgun up, and he's pointing it down there towards me. I assumed it was towards me. It really wasn't towards me. I said, hey, Rabbit. He said, yo, cuz. They called me cuz. I said, what's going on, man? He said, I shot a doe. She's down right down there. Ernie, Ernie. I said, what? Calm down. I said, I don't know where Ernie's at, but he probably can't hear you. I said, well, where's she at? He said, she's about 40 yards up here in front of you, laying next to that little pine tree right there. Ernie, Ernie. I said, Rabbit, calm down. I said, put your gun down. I said, I don't walk up there if you point the gun down here at me. I said, put your gun down, lower your gun down. He said, okay, okay. He said, I'll do that. He said, so he lowers the gun down. I walk up there and I said, yeah. I said, I see her. I get up to her and I poke her and I said, yeah, she's down. I said, you got her. He said, I got her. I said, yeah. He said, Ernie, Ernie. I said, Rabbit, Ernie can't help you. I said, Ernie can't help you, buddy. I said, come on down here. And he takes off running. And he's running full steam down. I said, slow down. You're going to fall, kill yourself, you know. I said, slow down. So he gets down through there. When he gets down there, he takes his gun and he pokes the deer with it, you know. He said, I got her, I got her. And he starts jumping around. He's got his gun in his hand. He's jumping around. And I look over and his gun is cocked in his hand. And I said, Rabbit, I said, please calm down. Let me have your gun. And he stops and he said, oh, okay. And he hands me his gun and I uncock it. And I said, now, I said, you can jump around and holler, do whatever you want to do. So he starts hollering again, you know, Ernie. I said, Rabbit, Ernie can't hear you, buddy. I said, you know, we're going to have to take care of this on our own. I said, Ernie's not around. So we got there, and neither one of us had ever gutted a deer before, but I'd seen it done. So I talked him through it, and he got her gutted, and we got to looking at her, and she had this big spot on her back about this wide that was just bald, missing, didn't have a speck of hair on it, and it was black and nasty looking. And I said, I think this is the same doe that Ernie shot. And so, I don't know, probably an hour went by, and finally Ernie shows up, and we get to talking and showing him the deer, and he said, yeah, he said, this is the doe I shot. That's about right where I hit her. He said, that broadhead just laid her open right there. And so we brought the deer home, and well, at first we was looking, I showed Ernie where he shot her at, and we was looking, and Rabbit said, well, she was standing right beside that pine tree. And we looked at that pine tree, and that pine tree, it was about this big around, and it was tore all to pieces with buckshot, where buckshot had hit it. And so anyway, we get her home, we skin her out and everything, and that deer had one pellet cut her windpipe. That was it. One pellet out of all the buckshot that was in that shell, one pellet cut her windpipe. And so that was pretty lucky for Rabbit, but that was his first deer, and he was super excited about it. So with that being said, I just thought y'all would like another little quick story. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy these, hit the little button there where it lets you know that, you know, I'm coming back on here and putting something new on the channel. And we'll see you next time. As we always say, life is about choices. It's up to you to make the right ones or the wrong ones and live with the ones you make. So have a good one. We'll see you next time on Buster Bottom.